Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I give him feedback. Having received the feedback, I suppose it really is about Lizzie. Sorry, that's my daughter.
Mini-me. What's her name, is it?
This is Elizabeth.
Hello, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth.
Oh, hello.
Okay. Yeah, so in terms of giving feedback, if your state of intention is to be precise, then I suppose whilst you're listening, it would be to hear as much as you can, and then to give that back as clearly as you can, so that it, but in a manner that is there to help or to show. Like I keep on showing with my hand. I suppose that means mirroring to some extent.
Okay.
So we had Jan. You did put a comment there.
Okay.
I'm trying to look for it. So anyone else? Mada?
We'll just take one more and then.
Okay. I think that first of all, probably to identify the areas that we obviously needed to listen to, and help this person to realize or get the information on how to direct the coaching to be more in line with what we are practicing.
Okay.
And for them to improve.
Okay. Okay, yeah. Directing improvement.
So, women, if I may add maybe two things. The one is for the coach. You know, I think the metaphor Izette mentioned of being a mirror. If it's about showing blind spots, to be a mirror, and a clean mirror, as clean as possible, as a mirror. But intention, which could be much more individual, close to a selfish intention, is listening to a conversation with the benchmarks in front of you. It gives you so much insight of what's happening structurally in the conversation. So as a benchmarker and giving feedback, it actually puts you in the discipline to listen for structure, which will really enhance your own coaching as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Jan mentioned help the person grow, help the coach see, feel, understand something she might not be aware of. And Mega mentioned my commitment to supporting a fellow coach on his or her learning path while stay open to learning through this process. And is that also help them count where things were done well. And and just to build on what William was saying, for me, it's really stretching my detailed meta program, because I can be quite global. So it's I think we talk about meta detailing.
Yeah. How specifically are you global, Bruno?
Very.
Yeah. So the next one is what resourceful meanings do you give to giving feedback? So I think I wasn't sure whether some of the things that people were saying were about the meanings or intention. So the like the giving of feedback as a gift, is that a meaning or intention?
It's a meaning.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
Could be an intention also, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So, anyone would like to share a meaning? So we just have one or two because of time. And would like to share a meaning that you would give. And now this is through a state of being precise, state of precision in you as the meta person giving feedback to the coach. Danielle?
For me, it would be like giving a precious and delicate gift to someone. In the way of giving feedback. Must be precise, but at the same time, you must be respectful of the person to whom you're giving feedback. And so there's something delicate in giving feedback.
Okay.
It's sharp and it's delicate at the same time.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Danielle. Just one more.
Izet mentioned adding value, so meaning for her.
Okay, great. Willem, would you like to share anything?
No, I think the precision, the detail is really important. So with the metaphor of getting or giving a gift, I think all of us who receive the gift, there's so much more appreciation if there's really detail in the gift.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next one is going through the skills. So as a meta person, you only have 3 minutes for giving feedback. Okay, so I'll start. And when you give feedback, you always start at 2.5. So having sensory-based facts, so two every minute. So you'll have to give 6 facts because you only have 3 minutes. And these are sensory-based facts, which are VAKs. I heard you say, I heard you say, and I saw you do this. So that's a sensory-based feedback. And also being relevant to the classification. So be relevant to the actual score. So you actually start at 2.5 and you say, this is what I saw here. And at a 3, this is what I saw here. That's about the relevant state classification, using the relevant states.
Yeah, and using the relevant skill as well.
Yeah. So, but before you even do that, establishing rapport, and sometimes asking the question, so are you ready to receive feedback? Are you in the resourceful state for receiving feedback? So you check with the person with that, and always say that it's tentative. This is what I saw, and I probably missed some things as well. So being tentative. Yeah.
So on a previous feedback or benchmark form, tentative was also given the meaning of you own the feedback. It's not just something that you throw at a person that you say, okay, this is my feedback that I give to you, but you own it. Not dumping it on the other person. Yeah.
Okay.
So for implementation on number 3 is giving the person next steps for improvement and steps that's actionable. So you would see in the benchmark forms at the end is strengths and next steps, and to be specific about the next step. And my guess is the less is more here. The less next steps we give, the better. So it's having the insight as a benchmarker to say, my guess or what I'm giving you is this is your next step that will create momentum for you in developing these skills.
Okay. So at a 3.5, to individualize the feedback. So knowing where the coach is and really making it relevant to the coach themselves. opening possibilities in the information that you give. What possibilities, if they were to take on board that skill, what possibilities would it give the coach to really take them to the next level? So, and confirming and validate the coach as a person. So, for example, if you say, okay, so I saw you when the benchmarker interrupted you, you actually managed to maintain your state. So this confirms and validates the actual coach. Yeah.
Okay. So below the mark, to be vague, which is the stretch for many of our global guys, to be not, when you're not specific. And the way we normally do it is to use evaluative language, like saying this was good or this was better. So it's not using scales, but it's evaluating. And normally we think a positive evaluation can go through. No evaluation is allowed. So sometimes we say, okay, really, you really did a good job. Let me give you feedback. So you already evaluated the session by saying it's a good job. So to be specific on the skills and on the behaviors. So 2 is also to use your own criteria, not using the benchmark forms and the behaviors there. And convoluted means it's complex, it's difficult to follow. So if you get a bit confused and start speaking in a complex way, your poor coach can't do anything with the feedback. So to keep it simple.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So on a scale of 1, and portraying the feedback as an argument. I don't know if you can give an example, Bruno or Willem. Can't think of an example there.
Yeah, so self-criteria, it would, for me, the example that's coming to my mind is also self-criteria. If you would say to the coach, I would have done it differently, you know, then you're giving an opinion and you set up an argument between you and the coach. So then the mirror is not clear because you are part of the picture. So the whole intention of giving feedback is to have the mirror as clear as possible so that you just give feedback on the behaviors of the coach.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And then mind reading is also giving a thought of what you thought that the coach was going to do, but you don't know that. You're just predicting that was what happening to the coach. So that's mind reading.
And then at the note is not giving the feedback and using judgment or attack. Because judgment and attack would become much more personal and not being behavioral anymore.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So any questions before we move on?
So I was just wondering in terms of time. So let's say you're not sure of yet how you want to provide or how you give the feedback, so you're still learning, and you don't spend the full 3 minutes to do that. Is that a problem, or or do you find that it's normally a case of there's not enough time to give feedback? What's your experience in terms of that?
It's normally not enough time.
Yeah.
So I think it's the opposite, is it? It's normally not enough time. And as I understand ACMC, I was a bit long time ago there, but you would start giving feedback on one skill, and then in the next session you will give feedback on 2 skills. So it's gradually implemented for you. So yeah, I don't think that if you don't use all the whole 3 minutes, everybody would be thankful. Because it's really pressed for time.
Yeah.
That's the time.
So it's you really will need to rush, but at the same time trying to give 6 facts in 3 minutes to build a report, check, give all the frames and classify, etc. It's going to be packed. It's a packed 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Then the subsequent question to that is the feedback that the benchmarker gives. How does that differ from that of the meta person? So meta person is on the coach's work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Benchmarker is doing the same. So how do they differ?
It's more detailed because you've got 15 minutes, as I remember, 12 to 15 minutes, but the benchmarker would so therefore go into much more detail than the meta person.
And that gives you, as a meta person, opportunity to learn from the benchmarker.
Yeah.
Because you've tried it now, and then you hear how the benchmarker is doing it, and the benchmarkers would mostly build on the feedback you gave. So they wouldn't just repeat it, but build on it.
Okay. So I'll just move on because of time.
Yes.
So now, in terms of meta programs, in the context of giving feedback to the coach, is matching the coach. So what did you see right, and also what did you see that they could have done better? So matching first, and then mismatching second. So this is in your detecting the facts and details of what you give feedback on.
Yeah, and it's also great. It would be great if you think about giving examples how you can match what behaviors match the benchmarks on the form, and what behaviors mismatch the benchmarks on the form. Because what we match and mismatch is actually the behaviors of the coach and the skills and the sub skills as it is on the benchmark form. So global and detail, I think we spoke about it. So Michael created the term meta detailing, and that is the ability to keep the global perspective in mind while you're busy with the detail, and the other way around, to keep the detail perspective alive while you're busy with the global. So we would give in detail feedback on the different skills according to the benchmark form. But when we go to strengths and next steps, it asks from you to have a global perspective as well. You know, to see the trees and the forest.
Yeah. So the last meta program is, because you have to give sensory-based facts, and this is 2 per minute, you really need to use your VAK and less of your AD, because your AD could be a judgment. So really switching on the VAK, what did you see, hear, and feel? See, hear, mainly. Yeah. So
especially the feel. Women, if I may say, if you comment on feel, is really to own it, and that would be something I get a sense that, but it's my sense.
Yes.
But my guess is that's how far it can go. Yeah.
Okay. So inducing state. So coaching is a very much experiential process. So when you're coaching states to states. So inducing state is very important. Inducing that person in the state so they can talk about it in that state, so that they embody that state to talk within that state. If you don't use the state, then the coachees will probably be talking about the state theoretically and abstractly. So being able to induce and then into the state so that they can experience it and talk about it from within that state.
So coaching is not intellectual conversation, it's experiential conversation. And a way I used to remember this is that for the coachee, there is information and value in the state that we miss if we are just being intellectual about what's happening for the coachee.
And because coaching is experiential, one of the things that when you first start coaching is that coaches miss grounding the state. So grounding the state to a particular context. And if you have that state grounded, then you will be able to speak from that state because it's grounded. Okay. So the state by which you induce state is from a state of expressiveness. Okay. And your intention as a coach is to induce that particular state. So at the end of this, we'll list down the states that on the benchmarking form which you induce the coachee in. There are a list of states that you are meant to induce your coachee into. So and being intentional to induce that particular state.
So I think the distinction there is the distinction Bruno made in our preparation. We are not benchmarking the coachee and the states the coachee access. We benchmarking the states that the coach intentionally induced.
Yeah. Okay. So in the vein of in a state of expressiveness, just be aware what kind of state that you're going to be inducing. I mean, even in your facial expressions, I'll just share a little picture. And this came up in the British media recently. And there was a lot of talk of why this journalist was looking like that, and she was like that for like 5 minutes, staring like that. And if your coach is staring at you like that, what kind of state will you induce your coachee in? So just be aware of what kind of facial expression you have.
And if I can add, Wayman, I think that's the meaning of match and mismatch there. We would first, as a coach, match the state of our client, and then lead them out of it. So we all know from NLP the terminology. It's like a dance. It's space, lead. We don't outright from the start mismatch with the state of a coach, but acknowledge or the coachee, acknowledge the person and match with the state where they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's go to the skills now, starting at 2.5. So in a moment, we'll share with you what are the states that that you induce the coachee into. So you're looking at 2 to 5 states relevantly induced by voice and content. So using your voice and using the content, so the context. So and the the intensity of the state should be at least 7 and above.
And then number 3 is about questions. So meta questions we know do induce state. So I think the most common meta question that you can use for this is what you experience about that. And immediately you induce state. Using silence, creating the space for the person to be in state, and using engaging questions. So on a scale from 0 to 10, how well are you there? Go first means that you, as a coach, if you would like to induce a particular state in the coachee, you go there first. So you don't instruct the person and say, be excited. You speak about excitement yourself in a congruent voice with the gesture. It goes with that.
Yeah. So at a 3.5, using your voice, inflection, and even using drama. So using the drama in your voice to induce a state. So coaching the body. So asking the coachee, so what is the breath of excitement? What are the eyes of excitement? So coaching the body and using the induction language. So imagine the excitement, and when you induce a state, giving a menu list of states, but more than one. So a menu list is more than 2 states. So if you just give 2 states, it's not a menu list. You need to give more than 2 states. Yeah.
Yeah, the principle is it's not a menu list. If it's 2, then it's either or.
Yeah.
So it should be more than 2.
Yeah.
So not inducing states is having a monotone voice with no emphasis, speaking like a computer, matter of fact. I hope I managed to do that now.
Okay. So incongruent voice. So if you're talking about excitement and your voice doesn't sound excited, that's not congruent. And just merely talking about the emotion, not talking from the emotion, just talking about the emotion.
And then to intellectualize, to bring a lot of thinking and facts and maybe theory to what a person is speaking about. So for instance, if it's a desire, it's not a place for you as a coach to say, okay, so let's have a small lecture about desire and what it can mean. That would be intellectualizing. And your voice may present the state. I think we all know that you can't tell or ask a person be excited, and then your voice is really not excited. And a counterproductive state, that would be inducing a state that's not productive for the outcome of the client. And that would be minus 0.3.
Yeah. So any questions?
I see there were questions, but Bruno answered them. Thank you, Bruno.
Okay.
The silent force in the background.
Okay. So as you can see, there's a lot of emphasis about using your voice and to induce state, because apart from your body, it's your voice that you will be using. That would be your main tool for inducing states. So if you are using your voice to induce state, being associated with that state that you're trying to induce, so talking from that state would really be resourceful, and switching on your sensory awareness. So the VAK of that state, what would it be like? And matching that state.
So we're very pleased to welcome Chloe, who managed to join us. Welcome, Chloe.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Chloe.
Okay. So Wyman and Willem,
Yes.
as a benchmark, I think inducing states, it's probably one of the skills where people struggle the most. And I remember Michael saying, in fact, it was to the benchmarkers, but it's really funny because some of us are trainers, but he said, but when you sit in that coaching chair, you lose your expressiveness. So what's happening? Because it's true. So it's like losing that, like you mentioned, that expressiveness, that, and if you watch Michael, it's almost he's acting, he's stressing, he's exaggerating. So therefore, the sense I have, it's if you put yourself in a state of, I'm going to be like sort of watching and distant and maybe not associate too much, that's not going to be very helpful. So probably need to do the dance of a coaching, you need to be with your partner.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So my guess is, Bruno, if you say that, is that if I think of myself, so the moment I feel nervous and I feel I'm being benchmarked and I'm in the spotlight here, there's a lot of adrenaline pumping. And we know that will take a lot of our expressiveness and the freedom to just be ourselves and to be in that moment will take a lot of that away. So I think we going to ACMC, it's important to frame that as it's not a dangerous situation, and we are allowed to make mistakes. And the mistakes we make, it gives us the opportunity to learn. So those frames to keep us in a resourceful state where we can be ourselves and we can be expressive.
Yeah, and just reflecting on that, I think there's also what's happening. You've got so many skills to look for, like supporting, listening, questioning, meta questions, and then you need to into states and deliberately. I mean, by the way, some clients can induce themselves into states, and probably it won't count as inducing states. So it's really deliberate induction of states. This is what counts. So I think that you thinking of so many things at the same time, but you lose in terms of your expressiveness.
Yeah. I think one thing that I struggled on when I first started coaching is getting those meta questions, because it's the meta questions that will really induce those states. So getting the person.
So we've missed you a bit, Wyman. I've missed the last part of your sentence.
It's getting those meta questions, because it's getting the client to go meta that will induce the client into state. Because when the person goes meta, they're talking, being associated with the state rather than about the state. Yeah.
So another way of thinking about it, asking a meta question is going in and up.
Yes.
And a state comes from the inside.
Exactly.
So if you don't ask a meta question, if you don't go in, there won't come a state out.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you're talking about things outside of the person. Actually talking about the environment and not what's happening within the person.
Yeah, absolutely. So the last bit here about inducing state is this is something that Willem idea is to share the states in relation to the well-formed outcome. So I kind of like split it up according to the what, the content. So that was the what, the content, the how, and then the checks. So each part, there's certain state. And this is something that the three of us, Willem, Bruno, and myself, that we did this. So at this stage, when you're talking about the what, you're probably getting the person to look at, to reflect, to really gain clarity. So at ACMC, there are different types of conversations that you can have. You can have a clarity conversation, you can have a change conversation, you can have a decision conversation. So then you have to induce the coachee into that relevant state. So the what could be any one of those. So it could be reflection, it could be analysis, and the why could be the desire. So you're desiring the coachee to go there. But with the why, there's also the why not. So why don't you want your present state? And that would be the aversion. Yeah.
Just a precision on the left of a screen, where this is the list of states that we will, as a benchmarker, we will check which of these states has been induced. So reflection, curiosity, desire, aversion, analysis, decision, challenge, creativity, and action. And what we're doing through going through the well-formed outcome, it's give you an indication of maybe at what level are you, so which particular state maybe you can induce when at that particular level in the WFO.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Bruno. Thank you.
So what I thought about it is that in the beginning, and I saw it while benchmarking as well, that sometimes coaches think you can do the skills sequentially. So you first support, then you listen, then you ask questions, and then lastly you induce states, which is not true. It all happens simultaneously.
Yeah.
And this is an attempt to show that. So from the very first question, we are busy inducing states. So what do you want? Is a great question for inducing a state of desire. And we know people then start talking about what they don't want in general. And then the question, okay, did you have enough of that? Is inducing a state of aversion. So it happens from the very first question. Inducing states is not an aftermath. So I think the adrenaline takes us away from inducing states. The other thing that takes us away from inducing states is that it's on the second half of the page.
Yeah, on the back of the page.
Of benchmarking, and that we see inducing states as an afterthought, and it's not. It's right from the beginning there.
We welcome Angélique, who just joined us. So welcome, Angélique.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi, Angélique.
Hi.
Angélique.
So
we won't go into details into this, but during ACMC, what we'll actually do is what they call the axis of change, and when after you do that, you probably make a lot more sense, because all of these states are induced according to the axis of change. So I don't know if you want to say any more, Willem.
No, I think it's. I'm just afraid it creates more confusion than clarity.
Yes.
Because otherwise, we need to explain the axis of change.
Yeah. So I think all you need to take away from this is that you can link the states that you want to induce in the well-formed outcome. So that hopefully will allow you to then integrate inducing states when you're looking at the well-formed outcome. So because it's on the first page of the benchmarking form, you can integrate that in.
Maybe I'll just remind everybody that, like Wyman said, the state that you're inducing, so let's suppose you want to invite the person to be creative, so to brainstorm, but you want to induce it at a level of 7 or above. And so if you want to go back to coaching essentials, where we learn about how to amplify state. So maybe using the submodalities, helping the person to get more and more into that state. And sometimes it will happen that you want to induce a particular state, but even the creativity, the person would be at a level of 3 or 4. And so really it's your job, if you want to induce that particular state, to really amplify. And this is where also manual lists can be very helpful, because sometimes the person will say, no, I don't have any idea. So you can then suggest, remember, more than 2, so 3 or more possibilities, and then that hopefully will induce the person getting more and more into that particular state.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go on to, so now let's go on to questions. So do you have any questions? So you can unmute yourself. And any questions on receiving feedback, giving feedback, inducing states?
I had one. It's about how we merging axes of change into the WFO for inducing state. Is this what's happening here? What's I've picked up?
Okay, so if I can try and answer that, so let me just clarify the question. I hear the question is, are we merging well-formed outcome and axis of change?
And I may say Shama, who's asking that question, has already done ACMC, because axis of change we haven't covered yet in Coaching Essentials or APG.
Yeah. So Shama, I think it's the two are already integrated,
Okay.
especially well-formed outcome in the motivation axis.
Okay.
So if you think about it, the motivation axis is about what you don't want and what you do want.
Yes.
Which is part of the well-formed outcome. The decision axis, there are 2 questions, or there are questions on decision and the well-formed outcome. So they are merged. So if you go to the creation axis, there's the questions about what your steps and stages, what do you need to do.
Yes.
You know, those process questions are all creation questions. And the ecology questions are testing questions, which is on the axis of integration or solidifying. So actually the 2 models are in a sense merged already.
Yes. Okay.
If the others are confused at this stage, that's very normal, because you haven't done axis of change yet. So don't worry about this part. Axis of change is a model which is going to be presented at ACMC. So, but don't worry about it, and it's just a very useful tool to tackle change.
Thank you. I always thought it was 2 separate models, but now I'm thinking of it, it's actually more of the same.
It's more of the same, yeah. Thanks, Shama.
Thank you.
That was, So I hope this is answered appropriately, Shama. So any other question on what we did today? So maybe I would ask Danielle, who will be one of our benchmarkers. So what was your experience of trying to induce states when you were at ACMC, or even later when trying to get when you were sitting for evaluation to get your benchmarks?
It was one of my most difficult challenges because I had problems asking meta questions. And I remember the moment I realized I could ask more meta questions, then I knew also how to induce state. So this is very kind of a key issue. If you don't ask many meta questions, you won't be able to put the person in a state.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Daniel. Megha, who's also going to be one of our benchmarkers. What can you say about your experience of inducing states?
First of all, I tend to induce myself a lot into state.
And you go first. Yeah.
I do that all the time. So even on Saturday during that practice session, I just induced myself and the coach was there and he was just witnessing it. But I will say if I go back to ACMC in 2015, it was one of my biggest challenge and I also relate to what you said at some point, like we're so focused in inducing state that I couldn't even get it.
You couldn't get
I couldn't get it. And a huge part of it was connected to meta question.
Okay.
So my challenge at the beginning was really about asking meta question, but also moving on the sensory base, like moving, really coaching the body. I feel like the more you move on that level, you start inducing into state even without being aware.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my experience.
Okay. If I may add, I didn't really understand what was meant by inducing states when I was doing ACMC. So probably there were states being induced, but I would say that most of the time it was not deliberate from my part. So, but because I hadn't really understood that it was my role as a coach to induce a particular state in the client because I wanted to get some information or to be part, but it was part of a process. So that dawned on me probably afterwards when practicing to get my benchmarks. But during ACMC, I was completely unaware of what was happening in terms of inducing state. So if that could be, so I would say it's that's one of the reasons also of our intention to give you, those who are going to do ACMC for the first time, to give you some very precious advice and distinctions on what's happening and what are you supposed to do. And we hope this has been helpful to you.
So just before we end, could we just have a quick round as in one word, what do you take away from today? And we could just quickly go around. So let's start with Danielle. One word did we take away?
Asking myself what will be my best state not to feel overwhelmed.
Okay.
Still looking.
Okay. Shama?
For me, it was what Willem said. Sorry. Yes, he said that not the skill when we benchmark or being benchmarked. I always thought of going into skill by skill, and so now I will change my tactics and do it all together. Yes. Yeah. So that's my takeaway. Thank you.
Mega? Thank you, Shama.
Hi, thank you for this session, and it has kind of brought down the pressure that I've been feeling for months now. And yeah, for me, I will say it's about, and it's connected to what I heard William said at one point. It's connected to me reminding myself that being benchmark doesn't define my worthiness.
Yes. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. So you are not your score.
Yeah.
Thank you. Izette?
So for me, what I became aware of now is like being an observer is not going to serve me. I need to participate. So, and that comes from the awareness around you need to lead the state. It's like, oh, okay, I need to participate. I can't just stand and see how it's happening for the coachee. I need to be there. Yeah.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Cool.
Mada?
I think for me it is to focus on the meta questions so that I can induce the state, because that's where the value for the client lies.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Hi. Well, it was very interesting. For me, it was mainly on giving feedback, on how to give feedback, because I am an AD person and tend to be judgmental at times. So I will have to work on that part and put the intellect aside and be more into the VAK.
Okay, great. Great realization. Thank you, Diane. Chloe?
Oh, hi. Well, I wasn't here for the whole session, but for me, the last part was very interesting. And I think for me, it's mostly concentration, because like we were saying, we need to induce the state and know what the client wants, but we also cannot lose focus and lose ourselves in inducing the state. And like someone else was saying, we'll need to ask some right meta questions to be able to do that. So focus and concentration is what my takeaway is.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. And last but not least, Angelique?
At least, thank you. Yes, I joined, I think, in the last 5-10 minutes. But still, what I'm keeping about this small time, it's about when inducing state, it's about in the affirmative way and not in the negative. That is inducing what the coachee wants and not what he does not want, and really working about this on this position of affirmative states.
Okay, yes. The positive states, the resourceful states, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Just a clarification that, but sometimes you will need to go towards the aversion, what the person doesn't want. But I think the distinction is be very careful not to get the client in such a unresourceful state that then it's almost difficult for a person to get out of it. So, okay, so that's a distinction.
Thank you.
Someone joined us. I'm guessing it's Rishi. Okay.
Yeah, but he's gone. He's gone.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
okay. So just one question for you to take away before we end. So, what states and practices do you need to focus on in preparation for ACMC? And what don't you know that would be valuable for you to know and practice in preparation for ACMC? So this is all in regards to preparation.
Yeah.
And you may go on.
Yeah, no, I said, that reminds me that in the last session, it's going to be a question and answer session. So if you have any questions now, you can always send us so that we can prepare for the last session.
Yeah.
So anything you want to know about ACMC that you never asked before.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so that's, I think we reach the end of this session. So thank you, Wyman. Thank you, Willem, for a session which I found really interesting, and I learned a lot. And thank you, everyone, for your contribution. And of course, if you want to watch again, we'll send you the recording. And for those who join the recording or watch the recording, I would say I hope you really benefit from this, what we had to share today. And thank you for your comments coming in, that you love the slides. So I think that was on Prezi from Wyman. But really lots of insights from today's session. So thank you. And so the time is ticking off, 7 weeks to go to ACMC. So see you very soon, all of you.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Looking forward to meet you. Thank you.
Yes.
Hey.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.